Hello and welcome to our August 2021 little box of crochet. It is the Koi cushion cover by Lucia Dunn. Lucia you may know better under her design name of Lucia's Fig Tree, and she is responsible for some incredibly complex, colourful, beautiful designs, so do go and have a look at Lucia's work. The project is such fun to make. There's a lot of different techniques in here, so it'll really be an interesting one to get your teeth into. We've got some tapestry crochet, some linen stitch, picot, all sorts of things. So the project itself is made in, I think, 6 parts. And we'll work through all of those with you. And we're going to be working with the most beautiful drapey Stylecraft bamboo and cotton. I've not worked with this yarn before, and I'm completely in love with it. It is just beautiful. Soft, drapey gorgeousness. So let's get going. Right, so part 1 of our koi cushion is this centre, the picture of the actual koi themselves. I mean, we've got our border and everything going on here, but we're just going to be working this centre picture part. Before we get going looking at charts and all that sort of stuff, I wanted to talk to you about Waistcoat Stitch, which is the stitch we're going to be using for the picture. It's a special crochet stitch, and if I bring this a little closer to the camera, you will see that the V's, where's a good one to show you here? The V's interlock in a way that looks a bit more like knitting than crochet. So each V goes into the top of the V below it. Okay, so that creates a really good close sort of weave, if you like, on your stitches, and it works ever so well for working pictures and things, or tapestry crochet, or whatever you want to call it, because you don't get that sort of jagged look that you get with normal crochet, because the stitches all line up absolutely perfectly on top of each other. I'm going to give you a few tips about how to create waistcoat stitch. It's ever so easy. Let's have a look how we do it. Okay, so I've got a small piece of crochet here that I'm working just in some waist cotton yarn. It's a bit bigger, the yarn, so you can see more easily what's going on. The first thing you're going to notice is there's a lot of ends coming out either side of this piece. That is because we work waistcoat stitch flat like this, always from the front. So we're not turning backwards and forwards and doing our rows backwards and forwards. They're always worked from right to left on the front side. It does mean it warps a little bit, but you'll give that a pull and keep it in shape. And of course, we're going to do a bit of blocking at the end of it as well. But you will have a lot of ends. Now, don't worry about those ends because they're actually captured in that frame, that red frame. So you really don't need to think about them at all. And there's plenty of yarn, so you don't need to worry, that you're wasting yarn and you won't have enough left. So we're always working from the front side. So I'm just going to show you how to make the stitch, and then we'll have a chat about some tips. So I'm working a double crochet stitch in exactly the same way as I would normally work a double crochet stitch, and I'm using UK terminology here. Normally, however, I would put my hook under the V at the top of the work, like so, in that very convenient hole. And if you look just to the left of my hook, you can see, I grab a little needle, you can see the V of the stitch right there. So my hook is going to the right of it, and the V is sat there to the left. That's where I'd normally work my double crochet. All right, but we don't want that with the waistcoat stitch, because it won't create that neat little perfectly lined up row of stitches that we want to create that sort of crisp picture. Where we're going to put our hook instead is straight through the V, like so. Okay, so straight through the V of the stitch in the row below. I've obviously chosen quite a splitty cotton, of course I have. So my hook, what I've noticed is helpful, you actually use your hook as a hook and separate the V of that stitch. So if I'm giving it a little pull, I can then put my hook straight through. So you can see the hook is going straight through the V of the stitch below, and all I'm going to do now is create a double crochet in exactly the same way. Okay, what you'll find with waistcoat stitches, you need to do 2 or 3 before they start to line up really nicely and neatly. So let's do another one. So I'm not going in the normal place I would. You can see it's to the right of that V. That's not what I want. I want to go bang slap through the middle of the V. So I'm going to just give it a little dig with my hook, pop it through and make my double crochet. Oops, tensioning it a little too much here. There we go. Okay, so that is how we create the actual waistcoat stitch. So it's not tricky to make the stitch itself, it's just where we put our hook. Now this is where the main tip, the whole secret to waistcoat stitch comes from, the tension. If you pull these stitches really tight, you're going to have a miserable time, because if these stitches are really tight, when you come to do the next row of waistcoat stitch, you are simply not going to be able to get your hook through. So my advice to you is, when you start your foundation, and you make that nice and loose, when you've done your first row, and you'll start your first row as a double crochet, if when you do your first row of waistcoat stitch you are struggling, just stop, take it all out and start again, because it sounds awful, doesn't it? You've made the effort to make a chain, you've made an effort to do your first row of double crochet, then you've got to rip it all back. Trust me when I tell you, and Amanda has written the same thing in the pattern, she made a little note in the pattern, if you make that change at the beginning, you will fly along with waistcoat stitch and it will be a joy to do. If you make your stitches too tight, you won't be able to do it, and like I said, it will be miserable for you. So really the only tip you need to worry about is keep your stitches a little bit looser than perhaps you normally would, to be able to get your hook through. Another thing is, if you're just 1 or 2 are a little tight, what I did was I got my darning needle and I just put it through and gave it a little wiggle to open that hole up a little bit, and did it that way. But once you have a go, and once you sort of master that tension, it won't be a problem for you. So what we've done is we're going to do a little test piece, or a practice piece if you like. There's lots of yarn, there's particularly a lot of red yarn left, so if you want to have a go, make a little square of waistcoat stitch in red, you should be absolutely fine to do so. If you've got waste yarn, anything at all, you can practice it. It doesn't have to be cotton, anything at all you can practice in. Okay, so 2 things to remember. 1, you just put your hook in a slightly different place, it goes between rather than beside. And 2, keep those stitches a little looser than normal and you'll be fine with waistcoat stitch.